for the latest development around the Ibrahim Magu story and where all the noise might be heading to. We're now being joined by Liborous Oshoma, lawyer and public affairs analyst. He's also head attorney at Liborous Oshoma Chambers. Liborous, good morning. Welcome to the Morning Show.
Good morning.
To have you here. Well, quickly, what's your reaction to the Ibrahim Magu story? What do you think it signifies? Do you agree with the view that this shows that there is no sacred cow in the administration, in the president's administration? What are your immediate thoughts on what has been happening in the last 48 hours with Ibrahim Magu being interrogated by the Ayo Salami panel?
It's too early to say that there are no sacred cows in the administration, even though that this is happening in quick succession. But be that as it may, it is good that we build stronger institutions rather than stronger men. If there are any infractions committed by anybody, I had expected that we take, timely decisions to ensure that such infractions are investigated and possibly, culprits brought to book, and steps taken also to ensure that there is no repeated occurrence. That's my opinion generally. I would not subscribe to, the belief that there is power play. If they say he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. And so if there are indeed power plays, but there are allegations that cannot be swept under the carpet. Even people who had alleged that there are power plays also agree that allegations should be thoroughly investigated. But that does not mean that the administration has just suddenly woken up to its responsibility, believing that there are no sacred cows. There are still so many sacred cows, in the administration. I would expect that with this step they have taken, they should go the whole hog. For example, you accuse the FCC of Magu of not obeying court orders. Even the ICPC, the Nigerian police, including the government, hardly obey court orders. And so, if that's one of the allegations against him, I think we also should extend, to other agencies like the ICPC, also that hardly obeys court orders.
Thank you for that. No sacred cows, scapegoats. Which one is it? But I wanted to ask you about the performance of Ibrahim Magu, which, as far as I'm concerned, is getting lost in the whole conversation about power play, who's backing who and who has withdrawn their backing from whom. What do you make of his actual performance, and will that speak for him?
If you need to also benchmark the performance against the stand of the current president. Right from the inception of the EFCC, Ribadu was given, a marching order by the then president, Olusegun Obasanjo. But as at that time, you also saw that the EFCC acted more like a poster boy of Obasanjo to pursue passive enemy. And so, with all of the accolades, it got lost in that. In that style. So also, the first time we also see the FCC actually, rise to the occasion is this administration of Magu, thanks to the president who, right from inception, had said he would want to fight corruption. But the question now would be that the approach of Magu also, it's also not too different from that of Nuhu Ribadu and President Obasanjo. Yes, you can say FCC had covered more mileage than, Magu had covered more mileage than its predecessor in office, but his approach also is not too different. We had seen situations where the EFCC would, rather than investigate petition, because those people are either related to those in government or are in government, the FCC will look the other way. And so these also are some of the issues that people are raising today to also hunt him. But that said, you can say for sure that EFCC had obtained more prosecution. They have also obtained more conviction, than ever before with the administration of Magu. And definitely credit should be given to him, for all of that.
I want to talk through the multiplicity of agencies and functions in all of this? Because, I mean, one of the cases raised against Magu was the case of Obona Obla, which was even heading another sort of like anti-corruption crack units. Then you have the EFCC too there, and for some reason, the EFCC have always been headed by, you know, ex-police officers, like case police officers, and you have a lot of powers vested in the EFCC. I mean, how do you navigate your way through all of this?
Yeah. Ordinarily, if we are sincere in our fight against corruption, this ordinarily would have been a problem. Because also, even the EFCC, as presently constituted, has so much and too much powers vested in it, like you said. But if you also look at the EFCC, we had complained over time that the EFCC the Nigerian police, for example, has been seriously compromised. A lot of people, you know, public commentators have also agitated or advocated for the restructuring of the Nigerian police for effective service delivery. But that same Nigerian police that we have, you know, complained about, over time, we had at the same time, you know, deployed men of the Nigerian police to the EFCC. Almost 50% of the staffs of EFCC are inhabited by men of the Nigerian police. And also, like you admitted, from inception, other serving police officers or retired police officers have headed the EFCC. Contrary to the provisions of Section 2, paragraph A, sub 11 of, sub 2 of the EFCC Act, that says either a serving government officials in any of the security agencies or a retired who must not be below the rank of an assistant commissioner of police. It didn't say that must be a police officer. And then also, there are, as I speak to you, there are also in-house, what do you call them, misgivings by members of the EFCC also, who have been trained to carry out the job, who have consistently, you know, be professionalized in respect of economic crime. But you find a situation where you are trained, you're sent abroad for jobs, for the job, and at the end of the day, a policeman is deployed from nowhere to head your section. It also demotivates. These are some of the challenges. But if the FCC is properly structured, where a situation where you have the investigating powers of the EFCC distinct from asset management powers, then we would not consistently have this problem that we are having a situation, because what you have is too much powers in one organization, and then there is tendency to abuse. Secondly, also, for 5 years now, the EFCC had been running without a board. And we all know that absolute power corrupts, absolutely. So when you have an organization that's without a board and the chairman is the alter ego, it's all and all, definitely those that are close to him will be highly favored than so many others. You have staffs who have been, you know, on one level for 10 years, 8 years, no promotion, right in the EFCC. And so what you are basically encouraging is for them to compromise the system. And so since the buck stopped at the table of the chairman, definitely any compromise, he will bear the brunt.
Well, you said earlier that you don't share the view expressed notably by Professor Femi Odekunle, that this is all about power play.
Yeah.
But the truth of the matter is that since 2016, you know, there have been all kinds of power play within the system against the EFCC chairman, particularly from the DSS and also from other stakeholders. Now, the position of supporters of Mr. Magu is that, look, this is a case of corruption, fighting back. Now, do you agree with the view that it is possible that this is particularly a case of corruption, fighting back? And at the end of the day, Ibrahim Magu may come out of this, you know, innocently, declared innocent.
There are, first and foremost, like I said, he who comes to equity must come with clean hands. You do not, knowing fully well that government is the biggest business in Nigeria, and so once you're in government, you know, especially if you have backers, you become untouchable. And then if there are people out there also who would want your job. And the first, you know, for me, the first principle should be you should be above board. And you do not douse yourself in fear, PMS, and then give a matchbox to your opponent to light. That's basically the analogy that has played out here. I said this advisedly because there are allegations. These allegations cannot be swept under the carpet, even if there is power play. Assuming without considering that there is indeed power play. Some people wanted your job or that you have stepped on toes. But the allegation is the fact that the proceeds of looted funds, recovered looted funds, you have helped yourself with some of them. And that if you remember, as far back as 2018 or so, Kemi Adeosun did also raise the same allegation that the recovered looted funds that were not properly accounted for in the Federation account by EFCC. Before the clearance of Magu in the Senate in 2015 or so, the same Senate, National Assembly, mind you, the DSS DG is a member of the board of the EFCC. I both report to the presidency. The DSS did write a damning letter against the person of Ibrahim Magu. I am not saying, I won't sit down here to say, oh, Magu is guilty, but these are allegations. And I had expected that the president then shouldn't even gloss over this allegation. If you also remember, Shehu Sani, at that point, while accusing the presidency of being lakadasika or pussyfooting in the issue against Babachir Lawal, he did also say that when it comes to people in the administration, you know, they are deodorized when it comes to corruption. But that those in the opposition, they use insecticide. One would have expected at the moment these allegations were raised, a panel of inquiry that is being set up now ought to have been set up at that time as a pointer to show that indeed the government, there are no sacred cows in the government, to investigate and then either give Magu a clean bill of health or, you know, indict him. But that didn't happen, despite Kemi Adeosun's letter then. Rather, Kemi Adeosun, who was, you know, who asked for clarification, became the hunted. People shouted her down. She had to write a series of letters to also further clarify why that wasn't, she wasn't trying to indict the administration. And this same issue, because they were not resolved, are rearing their ugly heads again. So it means that there is a recurring decima. That recurring decima is that looted funds are being relooted. Should we just fold our hands and say because the Attorney General had vested interest? Magu provided him the opportunity, or with the tools, to actually, even if he did have vested interest, he provided him with the tool to oust him.
Indeed. There's another allegation of insubordination, but the general public don't really care about that. What we're more interested in is what concerns us, which is the allegation of diversion of funds. Now, what you have just said has put the comments from the presidency about how this investigation shows that there are no sacred cows and what have you, put it in a different light. Let's talk about these lapses that you've highlighted, including the EFCC board or lack thereof, etc. Let's talk about that in terms of the vaunted anti-corruption fights. The president has a three-pronged agenda. Anti-corruption plays a huge part because he's always been known. President Buhari has been in public life for most of my lifetime, and he's always been known to be this bastion of, you know, austerity. Yes, and he has this monastic lifestyle, and he's so brisk and no nonsense. Let's start looking at President Buhari's legacy and where this anti-corruption fight will feature in that.
Yeah, it's like we say, it is never too late to do the right thing. These allegations had consistently been at the top burner. And now a panel has been set up to look into these allegations. Nobody is condemning Magu. Nobody is saying he's guilty. But let's give the opportunity, let's give the panel, administrative panel of inquiry, the opportunity to look into the matter, investigate them. And if, you know, anybody is found culpable, indicted, let the appropriate agencies, you know, carry out their job. And that's the only way the president can leave lasting legacies. That's the only way we can grow our institutions. That's the only way you can say the president had written his name in gold in the sand of time. It is not when, because Magu or whoever we believe is working here, I agree, he had worked so well, and so whatever, you know, crime he has allegedly committed, that we should look the other way, or the fact that he's the only person who can actually, you know, carry on the fight against corruption, or that President Muhammadu Buhari is the only person also in Nigeria who is not corrupt and who should be able to rid Nigeria of corruption. That shouldn't be so. Rather, if you remember, sometimes last year or so, Magu was asked about, legacies and building institutions, anti-corruption institutions. He referred to the building in Abuja and all of that. So these are ways, for me, the step that is being taken by government now are ways that we can institutionalize the fight against corruption to actually show that even if you are the head of such an agency, you also can be investigated. That no matter what happens, we should, as much as we can, keep those people who are recovering our looted funds far away from those funds. That's, for me, it's the way we can, actually manage this fight. Then secondly, I talked about the powers of the EFCC. A situation where you have the EFCC will recover a looted fund. They are the ones that will manage the same asset. They are the ones that will prosecute. That's too much concentration of powers in one man. That also there is need for us to take timely steps to ensure that we have board of these parastatals. And lastly, I would not also fail to reiterate this attitude and notion that it is the police that must do the job of the EFCC. You have employed people in EFCC to do the job of the EFCC. Are we saying that all of those people that we have trained over the years, 15 years down the line, that we still will go back looking at the police or retired police officer to come manage our economic crime agencies? These are ways we can leave lasting legacies and that the president can truly write his name in good in the sand of time. Until we do that, we'll keep looking our shoulders and pointing accusing fingers.
I mean, very good point you raised. When you look at it, are we saying invariably that we can't have forensic criminologists and the likes lead the EFCC? Because this is more of an intelligence job rather than, straight on what the police will do, will go implement arrest and the likes. Because if we have people like that, then the EFCC will function better. And secondly, I want to double click on that part that you talked about, that the EFCC actually takes looted funds and manages these looted funds. Under what guise should they even have access to money? When you have the Ministry of Finance there, and when you have various paraphernalias of government there, they'll be there, to take this cash and execute and ensure that this money is put back to the Federation account. And thirdly, if the president is fighting corruption, when Kemi Adeosun raised the case that the money is not complete, the remission to the national account is not complete, why didn't the president launch a big-scale investigation as regards it? Because it pretty much reminds me of Sanusi Lamido's 20 billion. And all of a sudden, the money trickled down, and they said, okay, there was no money there again. And fourthly, what are the chances of Magu here?
Yeah, I would attempt to take them seriatim. First and foremost, starting with EFCC's powers and the fact that you can't have a forensic, expert at head EFCC. Right from inception, I am aware also that EFCC had taken the pain, the federal government had taken the pain to employ and recruit men and women in EFCC and even deploy some of them to the FBI in America for training. I've deployed some of them to China and to India for training in computer software. But some of them, I can tell you also now, some of them are working in CBN because they've been frustrated with the organogram of the organization. Some are working in a telecommunications company because of all of those frustrations. One of these frustrations is stemmed from the fact that, yes, we are complaining that we don't have men enough in the Nigerian police. But yet, you have 50% of the members of the Nigerian police working in EFCC. And some of these people also are not trained in the act of economic crime the way you train the members of the EFCC. So that creates a divorce, that creates a friction. And secondly, moving to the head of the EFCC and then respecting court orders. As I also speak to you now, the former head of the academy, the EFCC academy, I've forgotten his name now, he was sacked by EFCC. He went to court and the court did ask that he be reinstated. But till date, EFCC had refused to obey that court order. Then also, we talked about, you also raised the issue of the chances of Magu. And okay, yes, the president leaving legacies. The only way the president can leave legacy is to ensure that you truly professionalize our security agencies. We're complaining, let the police be reformed. Let's have a proper policing structure. Let's have a proper policing. Let's have effective policing. Our police, look at our police college. You know, it's not a place you can even call a college. It's worse than prison. Let's have a situation where you have a proper policing. That's how you leave legacies in institution. Let's have EFCC properly trained and manned by people who are professionally trained to do that. And then chances of Magu. These are still allegations. They are still in the realm of allegations. And if the investigation, if the panel investigating the allegations eventually comes out to say that there is no iota of truth in all of these allegations, I think the government owe him an apology and should also reinstate him to the former position where he was, and then take steps to confirming him. But if it is found that indeed he did help himself to some of the looted funds, then the proper thing should be that he should be prosecuted alongside those also in EFCC who has assisted him. And then your last question bordered on assets.
I said, yeah. Assets.
Yes, assets. And you see, in world over, international best practices, those who recovers are not the ones to manage the assets. And that was why, you know, the federal government in its wisdom came up with APCOM, Asset Management Company of Nigeria. That's also, you know, it's a topic for another day. But EFCC, properties recovered by EFCC, some of them, the Magu had said that they were handed over to federal government to, for allocation. So do you know that you can make money from some of these assets? If you have a proper asset management company handling those recovered assets, even the funds, you know, there we have discrepancies in funds recovered and funds retired to the federation account. If you have an office, an agency distinct from EFCC that is managing this recovered asset, then the EFCC boss will not be accountable for all of this allegation. He will have to face squarely the job of investigating, crime and economic crimes. But when you have all of these 4 jobs saddled in one agency, that's investigation, and then recommending prosecution, and then managing the assets. Like they say, if you hold both the yam and the knife, the tendency that you will keep some slice for yourself will be very high.
Well, Liborous, you've said a lot, but for the benefit of our viewers, let's try to put a fence around some of the points you have made. Let's go beyond the individual and talk about the institution.
Yeah.
What kind of specific reforms would you like to see? You've talked about professionalism. You've talked about setting up a board. You've talked about, reducing the powers of the EFCC. Some people will say maybe the EFCC and the ICPC should be merged. But for the benefit of our viewers, would you like to just outline specific things that you think can be done to scale up the fight against corruption in Nigeria? Are you recommending, for example, a review of the EFCC Act? If so, what are the parts of that EFCC Act that you want, reviewed? Yeah,
first and foremost, our attitude to these issues should change. It shouldn't be, if we're talking about institutions, talking about lasting legacies, it shouldn't be about the personalities, it should be about the institution. And that's why, for me, the government attitude to all of these things, first and foremost, need to change. We also need to wake up the National Assembly. The National Assembly has been too docile when it comes to some of our laws. I think there's need for us to consistently review, the laws setting up some of these agencies. And one of them is, so that we don't have the same pitfall of consistently having to chase the chairman away because of abuses. And one of them is what I have recommended. Professionalism should be highly encouraged in the EFCC. Yeah, because it allows for secondment from the men of the Nigerian police. That ordinarily should be at the beginning of formation of the agency. But now that the agency has taken its proper footing, it should be properly professionalized. And that's one. And then also, if we want to talk about prosecuting or investigating, because it is the essence of merging all of these agencies, all of these arms, is so that you have a effective prosecution, because prosecution actually starts from investigation. A situation where you investigate and then another man, will recommend prosecution. In some cases, it is not too ideal. But here, we have also looked at the abuses in most times. Why are EFCC losing cases in court when it is the same agency that investigates and they are the ones that will recommend prosecution and prosecute? Because what happens is in situations where you allow human elements to interfere with the institutional framework, where because you want to rush to prosecution, the man reviewing the file will not thoroughly look at it. But if you have a distinct agency, I'm not talking about the Office of the Attorney General now, a distinct agency whose responsibility is saddled with just reviewing the job and the prosecution of EFCC, what you are going to have is a thorough investigation, because consistently that man who is reviewing will ask for I's to be dotted and T's to be crossed. And then lastly also, there's need for us to divorce asset management from the FCC who is recovering, asset. Fantastically, they've done well in terms of recovering assets. But the only problem that had consistently trailed chairman of EFCC had been the management of assets. If you remember, the same thing trailed Ribadu, Farida Waziri, even Lamode. Remember the 2 billion naira unaccounted for, accusation against Lamode. And now Magu. Is it that we are not looking at all of these recurrent issues and finding ways to ensure that, we plug them? How do we ensure that the man who is recovering the fund is distinct and different from the person who is managing it, so that the man who is recovering can concentrate on the job that he's doing? And so if there is a discrepancy, it is the person who has been called to manage that will be called to come to question. So also the files will not be compromised. You concentrate on investigation. I can tell you now, once guards are changed, definitely you're going to have a situation where some files will be dropped.
Excellent point. Thank you very much, Liborous Oshoma. And thank you for honoring our invitation all the time.
Always my pleasure.
Thank you very much.